It often begins quietly, almost unnoticeably, like a soft breeze turning cold against your skin. One day you wake up and something feels different, not within you at first, but around you. The air between you and the people you once called home seems to shift. Familiar faces suddenly wear unfamiliar expressions. Conversations lose their warmth. Laughter feels hollow. The connection that once bound you to others begins to unravel thread by thread without anyone saying why. You try to dismiss it, tell yourself it's just your mind playing tricks, that life is busy and people change. But deep down, you know something sacred has started to move. You can't explain it, but you feel as though an invisible line has been drawn between who you were and who you are becoming. And as you cross it, you begin to notice how everyone else seems to drift the other way. At first it's confusion. Why are they pulling back? Why are their words sharper, their eyes colder? You search your memory for the wrong thing you said, the mistake you made, but there's nothing. Only the growing silence, the growing distance. It's as if the entire world has decided you are no longer part of it. And yet, somewhere beneath the ache of rejection, there's a whisper that says, this isn't the end, it's the beginning of something else. The chosen ones, those rare souls who carry the weight of divine purpose, are always marked by this strange exile. The world does not reject them because they failed. The world rejects them because they have begun to change. In the stillness of that change, when no one is clapping and no one is watching, something ancient begins to stir inside them. The separation is not random, it is sacred. It is the first cut that divides the ordinary from the destined. The chosen. One doesn't notice it as a gift at first. It feels like loss. It feels like betrayal. It feels like standing in a crowded room and suddenly realizing no one can see you anymore. But this is how every divine transformation starts, through absence, not arrival. Through the slow tearing away of what no longer belongs to your spirit. You are being pulled from the familiar because the familiar can no longer carry your calling. Every conversation that feels uncomfortable now, every relationship that suddenly grows distant, every circle that begins to close its doors, you think it's rejection, but it's realignment. There are frequencies that no longer match your soul, and the universe has started the process of tuning you higher. When light begins to awaken inside a person, it does not blend in quietly with darkness. It shines, it exposes, it reflects. And this reflection is what causes the world to turn its face away. You become a mirror without realizing it. People look at you and see not just who you are, but who they are not yet ready to be. Your growth makes them uncomfortable because it silently reminds them of their own stagnation. They call you distant because your silence no longer entertains their noise. They call you selfish because you've learned to protect your peace. They call you arrogant because they cannot understand the humility of solitude. But what's really happening is spiritual contrast. Light meeting shadow. You are no longer resonating with the frequency of your old world, and so the old world begins to push you out piece by piece. The universe has a law. What no longer vibrates together must fall apart. And so it begins, the quiet falling. Friends who used to share your laughter now speak about you as if you're the enemy. People you supported start whispering behind your back. The warmth that once surrounded you turns cold and unfamiliar. You replay moments in your head, trying to find the point where things went wrong. But there is no wrong point. There is only the divine plan unfolding in ways you cannot yet understand. This is the season where every chosen one feels like a stranger in their own life. You walk into places that once felt like home and sense that something has expired there, something invisible but real. The energy no longer welcomes you, and it hurts because your heart still remembers what it used to feel like. But that ache is proof of growth. It means you are outgrowing what you were never meant to stay in forever. Rejection becomes your initiation, the beginning of your sacred journey into becoming who you truly are. The light inside you is expanding, and in doing so, it disrupts the comfort of those still sleeping in the dark. You are not losing people. You are shedding layers. You are not being left behind. You are being lifted out. What once felt like punishment is actually preservation, because every chosen soul must be removed from the noise before they can learn to hear the voice that guides them. And so, the turning begins, not as chaos, but as choreography. Every distance, every misunderstanding, every closed door is an unseen hand moving you exactly where you need to be. You may cry in confusion, asking why love suddenly feels like absence, why support turns to silence. But in the silence, if you listen closely, you'll hear the faint hum of something divine: preparation. This is how the Creator separates his warriors from the world, by first making them invisible to it. You are not being forgotten, you are being refined. The same people who now turn against you are simply revealing what could never have stood beside your destiny. You are not losing them, you are discovering yourself. And as the chosen one walks further into this strange season of detachment, the weight of misunderstanding begins to settle on their shoulders like cold rain that never stops falling. At first, they try to fight it, desperate to hold on to what's slipping away. They reach out, explain themselves, apologize for things they never did, just to feel that warmth again. But the more they reach, the colder it gets. They begin to realize that this is not something they can fix, because it was never theirs to control. Something divine has intervened. The universe, or perhaps something higher, is rearranging the stage of their life, pulling down curtains on scenes that have ended, even if their heart hasn't caught up to that truth yet. And in that rearrangement, people who once stood beside them begin to show their true colors. Some drift away quietly, without a word, while others stay long enough to plant seeds of doubt. The chosen one starts to feel as if they've become the villain in stories they never wrote. Their name is spoken in rooms they no longer enter, their intentions twisted into lies that circulate like invisible smoke. They start to understand that light, when it begins to burn brighter, attracts not only those seeking warmth, but also those threatened by illumination. It's not personal, it's energetic. The light exposes. It makes people uncomfortable, not because of what the chosen one does, but because of what they represent. A mirror reflecting truth. And truth is rarely welcomed by those who still hide behind masks. This is the mirror effect, and it cuts deep. It turns friends into critics, allies into strangers, and silence into the only company that feels honest. Yet even as this darkness thickens, something inside the chosen one refuses to break. They begin to see patterns forming. Every person who turns away seems to echo the same message. You are no longer who we want you to be. And perhaps that's true, because the chosen one is evolving, and evolution always costs comfort. It costs belonging. It costs the easy love that once came without questioning. You can't stay small once you've seen what you're meant to become. So the chosen one continues walking, even when the ground beneath their feet feels uncertain, even when the world seems to conspire against their peace. Each betrayal becomes a silent teacher. Every whisper becomes a mirror for self-examination. They start to realize that rejection often carries more honesty than acceptance. It tells you who never truly saw you. It strips away illusion, one familiar face at a time. And slowly, painfully, you begin to understand. The ones turning against you were never aligned with your truth. They were aligned with your past. As the chosen one begins to live differently, talk differently, see differently, the discomfort grows stronger. Those who once praised their kindness now mock their quiet. Those who once needed their energy now accuse them of withholding it. The chosen one becomes aware of how spiritual growth isolates, how peace itself can be mistaken for pride, how detachment can be labeled as indifference. Yet they keep choosing silence because arguing with misunderstanding only deepens the pain. The mirror effect has done its work. It has revealed who can walk with them and who cannot. And in that revelation, the next chapter of pain arrives, the betrayal. It doesn't come from enemies. Enemies are expected to strike. It comes from those who swore loyalty, the ones who once called the chosen one their light. They are the ones who, when faced with the brightness of the chosen one's transformation, turn their backs first. The betrayal feels surgical, clean, on the surface but deep in the soul. It's the kind of pain that steals the breath, but not the heartbeat. It reminds the chosen one that love, no matter how pure, can become a test, and they learn that not all betrayal is evil. Sometimes it's divine. Sometimes the knife that cuts is held by a hand, guided by something higher, forcing separation that words alone could never achieve. The chosen one weeps, not because they are weak, but because they feel too much. Because even in betrayal, they still love, still hope, still pray for those who hurt them. But something shifts in those tears. They are no longer tears of despair. They become the water that baptizes a new understanding. Every Judas has a purpose in the prophecy. Every wound is a doorway. Every ending is an unseen beginning. Slowly, the chosen one begins to surrender, realizing that this isn't a punishment. It's an initiation into sacred loneliness. The betrayal, the gossip, the judgment, they all become background noise to a greater calling whispering beneath the surface. And that whisper grows louder with every person who walks away. It says, "Now that they are gone, you can finally hear me." But the chosen one doesn't recognize that voice yet. They only feel the emptiness growing larger, the loneliness becoming heavier, until it feels like even God has gone silent. They wander through days that all look the same, grey, heavy, slow. They check their phones out of habit, though they know no message is coming. They scroll through old conversations like archaeologists of their own past, trying to remember what it felt like to belong. And in that emptiness, in that sacred silence, the transformation begins to deepen. The loneliness becomes a cocoon, invisible yet unbreakable. Everything inside the chosen one starts to dissolve. The ego that once sought validation, the fear that once kept them small, the need to be understood. These parts begin to die quietly, without ceremony, leaving behind only raw presence. This is the loneliness chamber, the place where every chosen soul must pass through before they rise. It is not glamorous, it is not heroic, it is dark, messy, and endlessly quiet. Yet, inside that quiet, there is a strange kind of peace beginning to form. The chosen one starts to sense that maybe this isolation isn't meant to destroy them, but to define them. That maybe being unseen is a kind of protection. They remember that even light must travel alone through the darkness before it reaches the eyes of the world. The same hands that removed everyone from their life are the same hands that now begin to shape something new within them, an unshakable clarity, a knowing that doesn't need to be explained. And so, they begin to stop chasing, stop proving, stop fighting to be understood, because in the emptiness, something sacred is being built, something that requires complete silence before it can be heard. The chosen one doesn't know it yet, but this is the beginning of their rebirth, the phase where isolation will turn into revelation, where rejection will transform into divine instruction. In the silence of that isolation, days start to blend together, and the chosen one begins to live as though time has lost its meaning. The outside world grows distant, muted, almost unreal. What once mattered, the opinions, the chatter, the social circles, now feels like noise from another lifetime. They wake up and realize they no longer crave company the way they once did. The emptiness that once frightened them now feels strangely safe, as if something unseen has wrapped around them, whispering, "You are not alone. You are being remade." It is here, in this hidden wilderness, that the chosen one begins to encounter the refining fire. Life becomes quieter but sharper, every emotion magnified. There are moments when tears flow without warning, not because of pain, but because of release. The chosen one doesn't know it yet, but this is purification, the slow burning away of everything false. They begin to confront parts of themselves they avoided for years, insecurities buried beneath pride, fears masked by ambition, wounds disguised as strength. The silence acts like a mirror now, forcing them to face everything that was once numbed by distractions. It is uncomfortable. It is raw, but with each confrontation, something inside them becomes lighter. The refining fire is not about destruction, it is about clarity. Just as gold is purified through flame, the soul is purified through solitude. The chosen one learns that pain can be sacred when it no longer controls them. The more they let go, the more they feel space inside their spirit, an openness they've never known before. It's as if the walls that once enclosed their heart are dissolving. They start to sense divine timing, small signs appearing in quiet places, coincidences too perfect to be random. They realize that maybe all along there was purpose in every rejection, in every goodbye. That those who left were never enemies, they were guides leading them back to themselves. In the stillness, the chosen one begins to feel gratitude for the fire instead of fear. Gratitude for the isolation that stripped away illusions, for the silence that taught them to hear the inner voice that was always there. The lessons come not through thunder, but through whispers, an intuition that grows stronger with every moment of surrender. This is the turning point. The chosen one begins to understand that survival is not the same as living, and that endurance without purpose is just another form of imprisonment. The fire teaches discernment. They start to notice the subtle difference between attachment and connection, between noise and message, between people who love them and people who need them. The refining process makes their spirit sensitive to truth. They can now feel deceit even before words are spoken. And with this awareness comes pain again, but this time it doesn't destroy, it clarifies. The chosen one starts to stand taller, not because they feel powerful, but because they've learned to carry their weakness with grace. Their eyes begin to see differently. What once looked like loss now appears as preparation. The pain they thought would end them has instead carved space for wisdom. Slowly, the chosen one's heart begins to rebuild itself, piece by sacred piece, stronger than before, but softer too. And in that rebuilding, a new vision starts to form, faint at first, like a distant light on the horizon. They begin to sense that the isolation was never meant to last forever. It was only a bridge to something higher. They start to dream again, not with desperation, but with calm assurance. The calling that once felt abstract begins to take shape. Images, ideas, sudden clarity begin to flow like quiet rivers through their mind. They realize that when life became silent, it was only making room for divine instruction. The chosen one starts writing again, creating again, imagining again. Every idea feels charged with meaning, as if whispered by something beyond their understanding. This is the awakening of vision. They begin to see patterns, the purpose behind the pain, the reason for every closed door. It dawns on them that their loneliness had been a sacred classroom, that what they learned there could never have been taught through comfort. They now recognize that every loss was a teacher disguised as suffering. There's an awareness growing inside them that nothing was wasted, not a tear, not a disappointment, not a single silent night. Everything was part of the design. They begin to feel a deep sense of connection to something larger than themselves. Not a god in the sky watching from afar, but a divine intelligence pulsing through every fiber of existence, guiding every step, even when they thought they were lost. The Chosen One realizes that they were never abandoned. They were being instructed in silence. The same stillness that once terrified them now feels like home. In that calm, a quiet confidence is born, not arrogance, not pride, but certainty. They begin to move differently. The fear that once controlled them no longer has power. They start walking by faith, not as a religious act, but as a natural rhythm. Life begins to whisper synchronicities, subtle alignments that confirm their path. People begin to appear not as distractions, but as confirmations, souls that recognize something sacred in them without needing explanation. The Chosen One begins to understand that divine timing is precise, that what's meant to find them cannot miss them, and what's meant to leave cannot stay. The awakening of vision continues to expand, and the Chosen One begins to feel guided again, though now it's quieter, gentler. There's no need for validation, no hunger for recognition. The journey inward has given birth to peace. They start to see the world not as a battlefield, but as a mirror. Every challenge, every rejection, every embrace, all reflecting the evolution of their soul. This new clarity brings freedom, but also responsibility. The Chosen One begins to sense that their transformation is not for them alone, that what they've endured was shaping them to carry something, to speak, to create, to awaken others who are still in the dark. But they're not ready to act yet. The vision is forming. The calling is stirring, but the foundation must first be tested. And that test is coming, a shift that will reveal whether they have truly released the need to be understood, or if they still crave the approval of those who once turned away. For soon, the world that rejected them will begin to take notice again, and the question will arise: will they seek validation from it, or will they rise beyond it? The Chosen One begins to feel a strange shift in the air around them, a subtle vibration that something is about to change. The silence that once held them like a cocoon begins to thin, and the outer world starts to call again, not through chaos, this time, but through opportunity. People who had disappeared suddenly reappear. Old names flash on the phone, doors that were once shut creak open again. Yet everything feels different. The Chosen One no longer responds with the same urgency, no longer feels the same hunger for validation. Their spirit is steadier now, grounded in something deeper. They walk through the world with a quiet authority, not seeking attention, but naturally drawing it. There is light in their eyes that others can't explain, an energy that feels magnetic, yet peaceful. The same people who once doubted them now sense that something has changed, though they cannot describe it. They whisper to one another that the Chosen One seems different, calmer, wiser, more powerful somehow. But power is not what the Chosen One feels. What they feel is alignment. They are now in rhythm with something larger, moving not by impulse, but by intuition. Every step, every choice feels guided, as if unseen hands are arranging circumstances in perfect sequence. The refining fire has done its work. They no longer chase, they attract. But this return to the world is not without challenge. The moment the Chosen One begins to rise, the energy around them begins to shift once more. Some are drawn toward the light, others feel disturbed by it. Those who turned against them before may now attempt to reconnect, not from love, but from curiosity or envy. The chosen one senses this tension intuitively. They begin to see the world as a field of frequencies, those aligned with peace and those vibrating with confusion. They move carefully, learning to discern who is sent by divine timing and who is sent by distraction. The same people who once ignored their pain now speak of their own struggles, seeking comfort in the energy of the chosen one. And yet, the chosen one no longer feels resentment. Compassion replaces bitterness. They understand now that hurt people lash out not because they hate the light, but because they fear it. It mirrors what they have not yet healed. This awareness brings the chosen one to a profound realization. Those who once turned against them were never enemies. They were instruments in the symphony of awakening. Without betrayal, there would have been no isolation. Without isolation, no revelation. Without revelation, no transformation. The chosen one starts to feel a deep peace about their past, as if every wound has finally found its meaning. They look back and see the threads connecting every loss to every lesson, every silence to every truth. But as peace deepens, a new responsibility rises, a calling not to retreat into comfort, but to share what they have learned. This is the moment when divine purpose begins to demand expression. The chosen one feels an inner pull to create, to speak, to act. It's not ambition, it's obedience to something higher. The same voice that once whispered in solitude now begins to direct outward steps. They begin to follow instinct with courage, taking actions that make no logical sense, yet feel right in the deepest part of their being. Doors open that no human effort could have forced. Encounters align so perfectly they feel supernatural. It becomes undeniable that something greater is at work, but with visibility comes new tests. The chosen one begins to notice a new wave of resistance, not from within this time, but from the world. Their light exposes shadows. People misinterpret their calm as arrogance, their clarity as pride. Whispers return, not from strangers, but from familiar faces who cannot accept the chosen one's transformation. Jealousy hides behind politeness. Criticism disguises itself as advice. The chosen one finds themselves in a new kind of isolation, not of abandonment, but of misunderstanding. They realize that when you evolve, you outgrow not just people, but perceptions. Some will forever see you as the version of yourself that no longer exists. It hurts, but it no longer destroys. The chosen one now carries wisdom as armor, compassion as weapon, truth as shield. They begin to understand that this second rejection is different. It is not punishment, it is confirmation. Light must disturb darkness before it can illuminate it. And so, even as the world questions them again, the chosen one moves forward, guided by something unshakable. Their speech becomes slower, measured, filled with grace. Their presence brings calm wherever they go. Strangers begin to feel safe around them without knowing why. The chosen one has become a vessel now, a channel through which something eternal speaks softly. They realize their journey was never about proving their worth. It was about becoming transparent enough for divine energy to flow through them freely. But the journey is not yet over. The chosen one senses that greater battles lie ahead, not against people, but against systems of thought, illusions that still hold humanity captive. They are being prepared to stand in places where truth is unwelcome, to speak words that challenge comfort. And though fear still lingers at the edges, faith now walks at the center. The chosen one's soul feels like a storm and a sanctuary at once, a paradox of power wrapped in peace. Nights are still long, but now they are filled with prayer instead of despair. Every morning feels like a new assignment from the unseen. The chosen one begins to understand that being chosen was never about privilege. It was about responsibility to carry light into places that have forgotten it exists. The same world that once turned against them is now the very world they are called to serve. And in that realization, a deeper humility begins to grow. For the chosen one now sees clearly. None of this was their doing. Every step, every wound, every breakthrough was orchestrated by a wisdom far greater than their own. The fire, the silence, the isolation, all were sacred tools of transformation. And now, as the chosen one steps into their purpose, they carry not anger for the past, but gratitude. For without the turning away of others, they would never have turned inward. Without the pain of rejection, they would never have discovered their true belonging. But this is not the end of the story, for purpose, once awakened, must be tested in motion. The chosen one is about to face the greatest challenge yet, not the rejection of others, but the temptation to return to old patterns. When success arrives, the world is watching now, ready to either exalt them or tear them down. And the question remains, will they walk in humility and truth, or will they be seduced by the attention that once destroyed them? The next chapter of their awakening begins, where vision meets reality and faith is tested in the light of day. The chosen one begins to feel the shift in the atmosphere again, but this time it carries a different weight. It is not the stillness of isolation or the peace of surrender. It is movement, momentum, recognition. The world that once ignored them begins to notice, and suddenly eyes turn toward them from every direction. The words they speak start to echo beyond their small circle. The actions they take ripple further than they imagined. There's a growing awareness that they have become visible again, yet this visibility feels fragile, dangerous, almost sacred. The chosen one stands at a delicate crossroads between humility and pride, authenticity and illusion. The same world that once turned against them now applauds them, but the applause feels hollow, like the sound of wind through empty halls. Deep down, the chosen one senses that this is another test, one wrapped in light, not darkness. It is easy to stay humble when unseen, but staying grounded when the world begins to praise you is the true trial of transformation. The chosen one feels the old patterns knocking at the door again, the desire to be accepted, the temptation to perform for approval, the subtle pull of ego whispering that maybe this time the world finally understands them. But another voice rises within, calmer yet firmer. Do not forget what the silence taught you. That voice, born in the fire of solitude, reminds them that purpose is not performance. The chosen one begins to notice how quickly admiration turns into expectation, how easily the crowd that praises can become the crowd that demands. They sense the pressure to conform again, to smooth the edges of their truth so that others can digest it comfortably. But the truth they carry was not meant to be softened. It was meant to awaken, and awakening often offends before it frees. As the chosen one speaks from authenticity, they watch as some people lean closer, while others step back, uncomfortable with the mirror being held before them. This tension becomes the new battlefield, not between good and evil, but between truth and comfort. The chosen one realizes that being chosen means walking alone, even among a crowd. The more they rise, the lonelier it feels, because fewer can understand the weight of integrity in a world addicted to appearances. They start to notice that every time they speak truth, resistance follows, not as open hostility this time, but as quiet opposition, subtle manipulation, envy dressed as friendship. It is a different kind of attack, not meant to destroy them outright, but to dilute them, to make them question their clarity. The chosen one must now protect not their reputation, but their essence. They begin to guard their energy like a sacred flame, learning that not everyone who smiles means well, and not every opportunity is divine. With discernment sharpened by past pain, they move slower, speak less, listen more. In this restraint, they rediscover strength. They understand now that power doesn't come from doing more. It comes from being aligned with truth, no matter the cost. Yet even with this awareness, the battle grows heavier. Nights become restless again, not from sorrow, but from responsibility. The chosen one begins to feel the burden of influence, the realization that their words now carry weight, that others are listening not just for inspiration, but for direction. The thought terrifies them. They remember when they themselves were lost, searching for a voice to follow, and they understand the sacredness of that trust. It humbles them deeply. They begin to pray, not for success, but for purity of heart, that the message flowing through them never becomes tainted by personal desire. And slowly, clarity returns. They remember that they are not the source, only the vessel. The energy that moves through them is not theirs to claim. It belongs to something higher. This remembrance becomes their anchor. The chosen one continues their path, creating, speaking, serving. But now every act is done in surrender, not control. And this surrender attracts even greater challenges, because true light cannot rise without drawing both admiration and attack. Soon, whispers begin again, different from before but familiar in tone. Some accuse them of arrogance, others of hypocrisy. Lies spread quietly, like shadows stretching in the dusk. The chosen one is tempted to defend themselves, but something in them says no. They have learned that truth needs no defense. It stands unshaken in silence, so they remain calm while storms brew around them. It hurts, but not in the same way it once did. The pain now feels purposeful, like a weight meant to strengthen rather than break. Through it all, the chosen one realizes something profound. Being chosen doesn't mean being protected from suffering. It means being trusted to transform it. The attacks, the misunderstandings, the loneliness, all of it becomes raw material for wisdom. Every betrayal becomes a new depth of compassion. Every loss refines their focus further. The chosen one begins to see that the world's turning against them is not personal, it's energetic. The light they carry reveals what others are not yet ready to face within themselves. When people cannot confront their own shadows, they project them onto whoever reflects the light. Understanding this brings peace. The chosen one no longer seeks to be liked, only to be real. They begin to live more quietly again, but this time the quiet is different. It is chosen, not forced. They start to retreat inward, not to escape the world, but to stay aligned with what matters. Their actions become slower but deeper, their words fewer but heavier with meaning. This balance between visibility and solitude becomes their way of life. They have learned that the truest strength is not loud, but steady, not forceful, but faithful. The chosen one begins to move like water, fluid, adaptable, unresisting yet unstoppable. And as they walk this middle path, they notice something beautiful happening. The right people start to appear, those who understand the language of silence, who don't drain but replenish. Souls who recognize light not because it shines brightly, but because it feels familiar. The chosen one begins to experience divine alignment again, this time not in isolation but in connection. These relationships are different, rooted not in need but in purpose. The chosen one begins to realize they are no longer the student alone. They are now a bridge. Their experiences, their scars, their wisdom, everything they endured was preparing them to guide others through their own darkness. And though they still face opposition, It no longer shakes them. They understand that darkness only tests what is genuine. The chosen one continues walking, not ahead of others, but beside them, knowing that the real mission is not to lead, but to illuminate. And yet, somewhere deep inside, they sense that another storm is approaching, one final purification before their purpose fully blooms. The world will soon turn once more, not in cruelty this time, but in revelation. The chosen one can feel it, the stillness before the next awakening. The chosen one can feel the change before it happens, a subtle trembling beneath the surface of ordinary days. There's a heaviness in the air, not born of fear, but of inevitability. It is as though life itself is holding its breath, waiting for something to be revealed. The chosen one, now seasoned in discernment, doesn't panic. They simply observe. They have learned to sense when the universe is rearranging them again, reshaping everything they thought was stable. Old structures begin to crack. Relationships that once felt secure start to drift apart. Familiar patterns dissolve. Plans fall through without explanation. At first, it feels like loss all over again, and the chosen one wonders if they are being stripped once more. But then they recognize the deeper truth. This is not punishment, it is preparation. The divine often dismantles before it reveals. Every ending that unfolds now carries a quiet wisdom, as if saying, "This too must leave so that truth can remain." The chosen one begins to walk through these shifting days with an odd calm. They have been here before, and though the pain still stings, it no longer defines them. They understand that growth comes in spirals, not straight lines, that the same lessons return at higher frequencies, testing the strength of what has been learned. As the outer world rearranges, an inner storm begins to stir. Memories resurface, unresolved fragments of the past seeking closure. The chosen one is confronted not by enemies this time, but by echoes of themselves. The versions that once feared, once doubted, once compromised. These ghosts are not here to haunt, but to heal. The chosen one faces them not with shame, but with compassion. They sit in silence with their own shadows, acknowledging the pain they once avoided, forgiving themselves for the times they believed they were unworthy. And in that quiet acceptance, a deeper release occurs. Something inside them softens, breaks open, and then dissolves. They realize that the final purification is not about others turning against them. It is about releasing the last remnants of who they no longer are. The chosen one understands now that divine transformation is not a single event, but a lifelong unfolding. Every layer that is peeled away reveals something purer beneath. They begin to live in a kind of spiritual transparency where nothing can hide, not fear, not ego, not illusion. This raw honesty feels like vulnerability, yet it is their greatest strength. The chosen one begins to embody truth so fully that falsehood naturally falls away. But as this happens, the world responds once more. Those who built their comfort around pretense begin to feel uneasy around the chosen one's authenticity. Conversations grow tense, distances widen, familiar faces withdraw again. It's not personal, it's energetic dissonance. The chosen one's presence now acts as a mirror, so clear that others cannot avoid seeing themselves in it. And once again, the turning begins. Subtle rejection, cold distance, silent misunderstandings, they return. But this time the chosen one does not resist. They allow it. They no longer need to prove who they are or justify their peace. They understand that being chosen is not about convincing others of truth. It is about living it quietly until truth reveals itself. The world's turning no longer feels like an attack, but like a rhythm, a natural cycle of evolution. The chosen one knows that every soul moves at its own pace, and forcing awakening only breeds resistance. So they simply remain, a still point in the chaos, a light that doesn't demand attention but refuses to dim. And in that stillness, something extraordinary begins to happen. The chosen one starts to feel freedom in its purest form, not the freedom of circumstance, but the freedom of inner detachment. Their peace no longer depends on who stays or who leaves, on who believes or who doubts. They are rooted in something eternal, untouched by external fluctuation. This state is not apathy, it is transcendence. The chosen one moves through the world like a quiet observer, participating fully yet unattached to outcome. They see clearly now how illusion drives the world, how fear masquerades as logic, how greed disguises itself as ambition, how people trade authenticity for belonging. It no longer angers them, it simply deepens their compassion. They understand that everyone is doing their best with the awareness they have. But awareness, once awakened, cannot go back to sleep. The chosen one begins to notice the subtle hand of the divine orchestrating everything around them, the timing of encounters, the synchronicities, the unseen protection in moments of uncertainty. It becomes clear that life itself is conscious, communicating in whispers to those who are still enough to listen. The chosen one starts to live in that dialogue, trusting the unseen more than the visible. And then, just when they begin to feel completely at peace, the greatest test arrives, not as tragedy, but as temptation. The world offers them comfort again, recognition, success, connection, all dressed in beauty but tinged with compromise. They stand at the crossroads once more, and the question returns: will they remain true to purpose, or will they bend to ease? The chosen one feels the pull, but something inside them has changed. They remember the fire, the silence, the isolation, the countless nights where everything familiar vanished. They remember what it cost to find this peace. So, with steady breath, they choose truth again, even if it means walking alone. And in that choice, something sacred happens. The illusion collapses completely. The chosen one sees through everything, the games, the masks, the pretenses, and realizes that nothing external ever truly mattered. All battles were internal, all rejections were redirections, all endings were beginnings in disguise. The chosen one smiles softly, not with pride, but with understanding. They realize they have crossed a threshold that cannot be uncrossed. They are no longer reacting to life, they are flowing with it. The turning of others no longer wounds them, it reveals them. Each rejection now feels like guidance, each silence like instruction. The chosen one becomes a witness to divine intelligence at work, seeing how even pain serves purpose. They begin to walk lightly upon the earth, unburdened by expectation. The storms still come, but they pass through them like wind through open hands. They have become untouchable, not because they are invincible, but because they no longer resist. What is? The chosen one has become the calm within the chaos, the eye of the storm, a living reminder that peace is not the absence of pain, but the mastery of it. And in this state, they begin to see their reflection in others, those who are just entering their own awakening, confused, rejected, lost. The chosen one recognizes themselves in their pain and feels the gentle pull to reach back, to guide, to illuminate, not as a savior, but as a mirror. For now they understand the true purpose of being chosen was never about rising above others, but about remembering for others what they have forgotten within themselves. The chosen one moves now with the quiet certainty of someone who no longer seeks proof. They have become the calm they once begged the heavens for. Each breath feels guided, each moment intentional. The noise of the world still hums around them, but it no longer enters. It's as if an invisible line separates the temporary from the eternal, and they now live beyond that line. But peace does not mean stillness alone. It brings with it a new kind of responsibility. The chosen one feels an inner pull to use everything they've learned, not to preach, but to live in such a way that their very presence becomes a teaching. When they speak, they no longer try to convince. When they act, they no longer try to impress. They have become a vessel of quiet truth, and truth speaks without sound. People begin to approach them, drawn not by charisma, but by resonance. Those who are weary, broken, confused find solace in their company. There's something about the chosen one's energy that makes others feel seen without judgment, understood without explanation. This is the true ministry of a soul awakened, to be a living mirror that reflects others back to themselves. Yet even this season of peace carries new challenges, subtle and profound. The chosen one begins to notice the fine line between helping and saving, between guiding and controlling. They realize that the same ego that once sought validation through suffering can also disguise itself as self-importance through service. To be a light is not to carry others. It is to remind them that they have their own. So the chosen one learns restraint once more, stepping back when needed, allowing others their lessons, their pain, their timing. They understand now that love respects freedom. It does not rush awakening, it witnesses it. Through this understanding, their compassion deepens. They look at humanity not as lost or blind, but as children learning to walk in the dark. Each soul fumbling toward remembrance, each wound a doorway to grace. The chosen one begins to see divine intelligence not only in beauty but in chaos, not only in creation but in destruction. Every ending, every heartbreak, every injustice suddenly appears as part of a vast orchestration, painful but purposeful. They begin to feel the heartbeat of existence itself, the pulse of something timeless moving through everything, connecting all. The illusion of separation that once caused so much pain begins to dissolve completely. The chosen one realizes that the people who turned against them were not separate. They were expressions of the same consciousness playing different roles in the same story. That betrayal and love came from the same source, both crafted to awaken remembrance. It's an overwhelming realization, almost too vast for the human mind to contain. But the chosen one no longer tries to contain it. They surrender to it. They understand now that to resist the flow of life is to resist the divine itself. And so they begin to live in full acceptance, not passive acceptance that tolerates, but sacred acceptance that trusts. Whatever comes, they receive. Whatever leaves, they release. This surrender becomes their new form of worship, not through rituals or words, but through presence. Each day feels holy because it is lived consciously. Every conversation, every silence, every tear becomes prayer. They begin to see how life responds differently now, how situations that once caused fear now pass effortlessly, how doors open before they knock, how protection surrounds them in ways they cannot explain. It's not magic, it's alignment. They have finally aligned their inner world with truth, and the outer world mirrors it. The chosen one realizes that life was never against them. It was training them to match its rhythm. This awareness fills them with deep gratitude. They begin to thank not just the good moments, but the painful ones, understanding that both carried equal value in shaping who they've become. Their heart, once guarded, now feels like an open field, vast, unafraid, receptive. And in that openness, divine inspiration begins to flow again, stronger than ever. Visions come like waves, not of grandeur, but of clarity. They see how their journey can serve others, not through force, but through embodiment. The chosen one begins to create Again, words, art, acts of kindness, moments of truth that ripple quietly through the world. They do not need recognition. They simply need to express what flows through them. And yet, as their light expands, so too does the shadow. For wherever light shines, it reveals what has long been hidden. Some people respond with awe, others with discomfort. The cycle begins again, admiration turning to resistance, acceptance turning to judgment. But this time, the chosen one doesn't flinch. They understand that light must continually meet darkness, not to fight it, but to reveal it. Each turning of others now feels like a dance rather than a wound. The chosen one moves gracefully through misunderstanding, their peace intact, their focus unwavering. They've become untouchable not because they are beyond feeling, but because they are beyond illusion. The world's opinions no longer define them, only truth does. Their power lies in stillness. And yet, beneath that stillness, a quiet fire burns, a devotion to serve, to love, to awaken others not by force but by example. The chosen one begins to walk among the broken, not as someone above them, but as one of them, healed enough to heal, humble enough to remain human. They laugh again, not the laughter of relief, but of recognition, the laughter that comes when one finally understands that all along everything was connected. The universe, once mysterious and hostile, now feels like home. The chosen one sees signs everywhere, the rustle of wind through trees, the rhythm of footsteps on quiet streets, the way strangers smile without reason. Every small detail whispers the same truth. All is one. And in that realization, they find peace deeper than silence, joy purer than happiness. They begin to move through the world lightly, touching lives without leaving marks, guiding without claiming credit. They become like the wind, felt, not seen. The chosen one has stepped fully into their purpose now, not through declaration, but through embodiment. They are not trying to change the world, they are allowing truth to flow through them and letting the world change itself. And yet, as this new peace settles, the chosen one senses one final lesson approaching, a closing of the circle, the last test of surrender. For enlightenment is not an end, it is the beginning of service. The divine will soon ask them to give away even what they've become, to release not only pain and attachment, but identity itself. The chosen one feels it coming, the final dissolving of I, the merging back into the vastness that sent them here. The chosen one feels it long before it arrives, the stillness before the last storm, the sacred silence that precedes the final unveiling. It doesn't come as thunder or fire this time. It comes as a soft whisper in the soul, a gentle nudge asking, "Are you ready to let even this go?" They have surrendered their pain, their past, their name, their need to be understood. But now, the divine asks for something greater, the surrender of the self that calls itself chosen. It is the most intimate death, not of body, but of identity, the dissolving of the line between servant and source. At first, the chosen one resists. They wonder, if I let go of who I am, what will remain? The question echoes through the chambers of their being, and then slowly the answer rises, not in words but in knowing. Everything. For what dies is illusion, and what remains is truth. The chosen one begins to feel the boundaries of their being dissolve. They sense themselves expanding beyond the body, beyond thought, beyond the personality that once clung to a mission. The I that once fought, learned, and overcame begins to fade like mist in morning light. In its place emerges a vast awareness, wordless and eternal. The chosen one watches this happen as if both observer and participant, realizing now that the journey was never about becoming something greater, but remembering what they already were. Every trial, every rejection, every tear was designed to break the shell of ego so the infinite could shine through. And now it shines, quiet, boundless, complete. They look around and see not people, not faces, not forms, but reflections of the same light that burns within. Enemies and friends alike appear as different shapes of the same divine flame. The world itself seems to breathe with consciousness, alive and aware. The Chosen One understands at last that the divine was never somewhere above. It was the very fabric of everything that is. They had been swimming in God all along. This realization is not an idea. It's an experience that floods every corner of their existence. Tears fall, not from sadness, but from recognition. They laugh and cry at once, overwhelmed by the beauty of it all, the way darkness served the light, the way pain revealed love, the way loss carved room for eternity. Every question that haunted them now dissolves into silence, and in that silence lies every answer. The Chosen One no longer seeks purpose, for they realize life itself is purpose. Breathing is worship, living is devotion, being is prayer. The separation between sacred and ordinary collapses. Everything becomes holy. The sunlight on stone, the laughter of children, even the ache of the heart. All of it sings the same song of divine expression. And in this awareness, something miraculous happens. The Chosen One disappears. Not in death, but in unity. There is no longer a they and the divine, no chosen and unchosen. There is only consciousness experiencing itself in endless forms. The Chosen One becomes the river and the ocean, the drop and the wave, the silence and the sound. They become the wind moving through leaves, the light reflecting on water, the heartbeat in all beings. And though they still walk among people, speak and smile, the world no longer sees a person. They see presence itself. Those who meet them feel an inexplicable peace, as if touched by something ancient and infinite. They speak less, for words seem small compared to the vastness within. When they do speak, every word carries a weight of grace, as if spoken not from mind but from eternity. They no longer react to life. They respond to it, gently, wisely, with the ease of someone who knows everything is unfolding as it should. The Chosen One understands now why everyone once turned against them. It was never punishment, it was initiation. Humanity, in its confusion, became the sculptor of their awakening. Every wound carved away illusion until only truth remained. They see now that rejection was redirection, betrayal was purification, isolation was preparation. Life was never cruel, it was meticulously divine. The Chosen One begins to move through the world as a quiet force of love. They heal not by effort, but by presence. They teach not by words, but by example. They carry an invisible light that draws people toward remembrance. They live simply, laugh easily, forgive instantly, and love without reason. And though they've reached the summit of realization, they bow lower than ever, for they know the infinite cannot be owned or claimed. It can only be served. In this final stage, they no longer call themselves chosen, because they see now that everyone is. Every soul is on its journey home, each playing a part in the divine unfolding. Some awaken through joy, others through pain, but all are destined to return. The Chosen One's purpose now is to remind the world of that truth, not by preaching it, but by being it. They live as a bridge between heaven and earth, their heart an open gateway through which divine love flows into the human realm. When storms come, they stand still. When darkness rises, they shine quietly. When others lose faith, they hold space for it to return. And in moments of solitude, when they gaze at the stars, they feel not awe but familiarity, as if looking into the mirror of their own soul. The journey that began in confusion ends in clarity, but even now they know it's not truly an end. For creation is endless, and consciousness forever exploring itself through new forms. They may return again in another body, another name, another time to walk the path once more, not out of obligation, but love. Because once a soul tastes the truth of oneness, it desires only to serve it. So the chosen one dissolves into eternity, and eternity breathes through them. The story of struggle becomes the song of surrender, and the song becomes silence. The wind moves, the stars shine, the world continues, unaware that something miraculous has just occurred, that a fragment of God has remembered itself. And perhaps, somewhere in the quiet of the night, another heart begins to awaken, feeling the same strange pull, the same sacred loneliness, unaware that they too are being called. The cycle begins anew, and the universe smiles, for this is how it has always been. The chosen one is gone, and yet everywhere. The journey is over, and yet it continues. The light that once walked the earth now lives within all who are ready to see. For when one awakens, all are touched, and so the divine whisper echoes through eternity, as it always does. You were never alone. You were never separate. You were never becoming. You were always home.